Welcome to this week's episode of 10 Minutes with Sam. I'm your host, Akshat Singh. Today, we'll be speaking to Mr. Tilak Devasher. Mr. Devasher is a renowned expert on Pakistan. He has served as the former Special Secretary to the Government of India, and he currently serves as the member of the National Security Advisory Board. We're glad to have you on the show, sir.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
So the format of the show is pretty straightforward. We have 10 minutes and we'd be covering as much ground as possible in these 10 minutes right here. So, sir, my first question to you is, so you are a very, very renowned Pakistan specialist in India. You have earned critical acclaim from both sides of the border. You have authored 3 books. There's a 4th one on the way. So let's start from Pakistan, sir. Sir, we know that when Imran Khan came to power, there were lots of talks of bilateral cooperation, of cooperation on security, cooperation on strategic affairs, and so on. But there seems to have been a deadlock when it comes to the Kashmir issue. How do you think India can get out of this subcontinental deadlock?
Frankly, I'm not optimistic about this deadlock either being broken or a renewal of talks, and there are a couple of reasons for it. First, Pakistan has imposed 2 conditions for talks. One is that India reverses the changes that were made on 5th August 2019, and India repeals the domicile law, apart from a host of other things. And this is not going to happen. India looks upon this as a purely internal issue, and we're not going to either reverse the change, especially not at Pakistan's base. So there is absolutely no scope for any kind of flexibility or talks. Secondly, there are 2 other aspects to the situation. One, the kind of abusive, and if I may put the word gutter language that Imran Khan has been using against the Prime Minister, against India, against the government, is absolutely shocking and appalling for the leader of a country of 200 million people. You don't expect this. And if he's going to continue on his same vein, as he continued even his interview to the German magazine last week, there's no way anybody in India is going to take him seriously, or we can think that we can have a dialogue. And then second, Pakistan has to get used to the changes that have taken place in Kashmir. The problem with Pakistan is that it feels that its nationalism has been demolished by what happened in 5th of August. And therefore, it needs to develop a new narrative. So without these things, I don't see it being optimistic at all for a dialogue.
Absolutely, sir. And when we talk about the security dimension of the affairs between India and Pakistan right now, there seems to be a very, very interesting development when we talk about China particularly. In the past half a decade, China is playing an increasing role in the affairs between India and Pakistan. So how much do you think of a security threat is the Pakistan-China access to India?
You see, it will be a serious security threat in case there was collusivity, in case action of one was being supported or reinforced by the other. So far, there have been some evidence of Pakistan moving some troops to Gilgit, and activating the Skardu air base and so on and so forth. But if China were to depend on Pakistan for whatever its problems with India are, then I feel really sorry for China. So yes, there is a security threat. There will be a security threat in case there is collusivity. But if there isn't, and I think we'll have to wait for more evidence to see whether actually there is collusivity and cooperation on the ground.
We know that the Imran Khan government in Pakistan, it is on the cusp of being severely criticized by the opposition. We know that the country, all in all, seems to be on the cusp of revolution. Do you think the government is stable enough to carry out another term, perhaps?
Well, 2 things in your question. First of all, I don't think it's ready for a revolution, as commonly understood. It's not a revolution. Secondly, forget a second term. The question really should be whether Imran Khan is going to complete this term, before you start talking about the other term. Yes, the opposition, because of his arrogance and his sort of pursuing a one-sided accountability process, the opposition has come together in what's called the Pakistan Democratic Movement. They've had 3 successful rallies. There will be 3 more, and then a long march to Islamabad in January 2021. So the government is under a lot of pressure. So far, it's being backed by the army. But what Nawaz Sharif has done through his rhetoric and through his speeches is to make the army, and especially its leadership, a party to the confrontation between 2 political parties. This has never happened in Pakistan before. The army has always been the arbiter between parties, considering itself above politics. The Nawaz Sharif has made it part of the confrontation. I'm not sure the army likes it. So this whole mantra of being on the same page with Imran Khan, I think somewhere down the road, the army as an institution will have to think that are they doing the right thing or not. So yes, Imran Khan is under pressure, but also let's face it, that they're holding successful rallies or even a long march is unlikely to dislodge a government that continues to have a parliamentary majority in parliament and is backed by the army. So it is a very interesting situation. Let's see how it develops. And the crucial thing will be for the opposition to stay together for the next 3 months.
Absolutely, sir. And your remarks are particularly interesting because we see Pakistan as having a very vibrant culture of popular protests and so on. And regardless of that, the government would not seem to be much affected as long as they have a parliamentary majority. However they must have gotten it, as well as the support of the army. So that's very, very interesting, sir. So another question when we talk about the internal dynamics of Pakistan. In recent weeks, we've heard several stories of minority repression in Pakistan. We have heard the story of the abduction of Arzu Raja, a Christian teenager who was forcefully converted and married to a Muslim man. We have heard about the desecration of a Hindu temple in Lyari. And it seems right now that the narratives of minority repression in Pakistan are on the rise. So my question to you is that really the case? Has minority repression in Pakistan actually increased? Or has this always been the norm and it's just now that the media is actually talking about it?
You know, this has been happening for a very long time. And I'll tell you the reason why it's been happening. So especially forced conversion of minor girls from the minority community who've been going for a long time, kidnapped, converted, so-called on free will converted to Islam and then married off to somebody much, much older. 13-year-old girl getting married to somebody who's in his 40s or 50s. What has happened now in the last couple of years is that because of social media, much more of it is receiving traction and coming out into the open. Earlier, the mainstream media does not cover it till it reaches a certain level. So because of the presence of social media, much more of it is known. And the reason why this has been happening, see, Pakistan was created on the basis of the two-nation theory, right? Therefore, for a person in Pakistan to be anti-minority sort of supports the idea of Pakistan. You know, he doesn't think that he's doing anything wrong because it's the idea of Pakistan that you can't live with
the idea of patriotism for them. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And for them, they feel that, you know, it's okay. So that's one of the reasons why this has been happening rampantly. And despite every government making noises, you know, nothing seems to get done about it. Even a bill that was passed in the Sindh Assembly, for example, that minor girls, you know, you can't be married till a certain age. And then there was a protest by the religious parties, and that bill, the Sindh Assembly had to withdraw the bill. So, you know, this is a lot of this has been happening and happening for a long time, but it's been coming to the open right now.
So let's get to the last question, and this is actually something that you've written extensively on. So there have been recent developments from the Pakistani government side in Gilgit and Baltistan. Should India be concerned about it?
You know, have been trying for some time to make Gilgit-Baltistan into a fifth province. For the last 70 years, they didn't. So what has changed now? What has changed now is that China is pressurizing Pakistan that, look, if we are investing so much of money into the China-Pakistan economic corridor, ultimately going up to $60 billion, then we need to make sure that our investments are safe and that the territory is not being claimed by India. So this is one of the reasons why they are now pressurizing. But there are many constraints. And key one is they will require a constitutional amendment first. They don't have the majority in the parliament to push through a 2/3 majority constitutional amendment to make it into a fifth province, right? Then they have to de-link Gilgit-Baltistan from the Jammu and Kashmir issue because the UN resolutions recognize this area as part of Kashmir, not as part of Pakistan. So they will have, so what implication does it have on its stand on the Kashmir issue on the UN resolutions? And third, the so-called Azad Jammu and Kashmir has protested. This is our area. It's part of Kashmir. It's not a part of Pakistan. How can you take this province away from us? So there are these many complications that Pakistan will have to deal with. But the intention is to make it a fifth province because of Chinese pressure.
Absolutely, sir. Well, sir, that actually brings us to the end of 10 minutes. It was absolutely lovely to speak to you today. And we'll absolutely have you back on the show sometime soon again.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Wish you all the best.